Well, you know who I am, and if you don't, here's a quick reminder. My name is Red, aka Shaka, sub moniker Black Magic. This is the other side of ropes. And if anybody doesn't know what this is by now, I'll break it down. Quite simply, video blog slash column, whatever you want to call it. And we're talking about professional wrestling from a wrestler's point of view. And that will be me, yours truly. I'm going to do something a little different this week. And I've mentioned this quite a few times during the times when I had to write this up at night. And I've made reference to it a few months ago when I went on video. But now, since I managed to dig this thing out of my library, I'm going to quote a couple of passages. I ain't going to bore you. I'm going to quote a couple of passages from one of my forefathers, Roddy Piper. And it's from his autobiography, In a Pit with Piper. And it's in chapter 12. You can check it out. It's a thing called The Sickness. And yeah, I do have the book right here. Bang! Alright. We're going to start. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just getting bits and pieces. But there's a point to this. I don't believe this particular idea has ever been presented before. I created the term because I had to somehow identify it. The promoters in the wrestling industry would not want this made public. The wrestlers themselves aren't aware of it, even though their bodies and minds are being destroyed by it. The extent of depending on the history of the individual wrestler. To begin to help you understand, I'll put an equation. The amount of the sickness in the wrestler is directly proportional to the amount of manipulation in the promoter. Direct quote. This is Roddy Piper. Moving on. I was raised in this cutthroat business, and I am proud of it. The men who raised me were not aware of the sickness, therefore it was never explained to me, and I had to figure this one out on my own. And I did, after asking myself some questions such as, why did 4 of the Von Erich boys commit suicide? Why was Bruiser Brody stabbed to death in San Juan over a wrestling finish? Why did so many of the boys overdose? Why did we travel to an arena 250 miles, one way, pay for our own transportation and food, then wrestle and go back home with less money than we started with? Why did we do this night after night and not have a clue as to the amount of money we're going to make? If you ask a promoter what the house take was, assuming you were getting a percentage, he would be evasive, lie, or not even acknowledge the question. Sometimes, depending on the stature of the promoter, he would even abolish you from this territory for asking. It's called blackballing. Yet I still made it to town after town, never missing a match, and I was living and breathing wrestling and was willing to die for it. Gets interesting. In my mind, I was invincible, or should I say invincible, Vince McMahon. One time I was in San Diego, California, and I was teamed up with Keith Frank, aka Adrian Adonis. It was our first night there, and we got into the ring. As we got into the ring, we saw 4 Mexicans blatantly waving knives at us. Adrian said, "Pipes, let's get out of here." I said, "No, Addy. We got the high ground. I got you covered." I strolled over to the Mexicans and sweep kicked one of them, nailed him square in the temple, dropping him before he even knew what hit him. I kicked him hard as I could, never thinking or caring how much damage I did. The others backed off and made their way out of the ring while that guy was on his way to the hospital. I don't know how he fared, nor did I care. I was infected and he had been affected. Let's return to present day for a moment and take a look at Mick Foley. Same book. Now let's get this straight. Mick has a video of himself jumping off the roof of his parents' house, 15 feet above the ground when he was just a teenager. This is normal behavior, correct? In the WWF, Mick took this to another level. A 25-foot steel cage. Only this time, Mick hurled himself onto the concrete floor. Okay, everything's still normal so far, right? Then Mick hurled himself on the 3 tables, smashing them all. Don't get me wrong. Mick Foley has a world of talent, but there is no talent in doing this sort of thing. It's just plain sick, and Mick loves it as much as the promoter and, yes, the fans. To bring it closer to home, I don't suppose you might consider that you have a touch of the sickness yourself and don't even know it, would you? Let me give you the litmus test. You're watching Roddy Piper. He's on television, and you're getting madder at him at the ballot counters in Florida. So you round up Mabel and the kids, you drive 20 miles, sit in traffic, pay for parking, and you buy 4 tickets to see me get my ass kicked. Now, you elbow your way through the 18,000 other fans, you spill your $5 beer on the way to your seat, sit down, and get ready to watch me get my ass kicked for 20 minutes. I know that you watch for 20 minutes because I don't go over that time. I sell wrestling, not time. Just imagine how much I get paid per minute. Now, when the match is over, you gather up Mabel and the kids, you drive 20 miles back home, satisfied customer. As you lie in your bed that night, you're happy that I got my ass kicked. And something strange happens whether you are white, red, blue, brown in color. You completely lose your common sense. I think a doctor would diagnose us as sick. Simply. I'll put it simply. You're lying in bed, $400 poor. Happy that Roddy Piper got his ass kicked. That's fine. But if someone were to ask you if wrestling was phony, you wouldn't hesitate to say yes. You're admitting that I didn't really get my ass kicked. But still, the benefit of all this knowledge, you lie in bed happy that I did get my ass kicked. I know. You're going to tell me that you went for the entertainment. Yeah, the entertainment of seeing me get my ass kicked. That's called sadomasochism, and I do believe the doctors define that as sick behavior. In any language, in fact, it is downright sick. That's why we get along. I was full-blown sick. You just had the sniffles. And that's just a small passage out of that chapter. What's my point? Okay? The last generation of wrestlers to ever break in within the past 2 decades, they've pulled a Mick Foley. You know, diving off the roofs of the houses, going through tables, hitting each other with flaming chairs, flaming crutches, this, that, and the third. It's different degrees of this whole dynamic. And then you got people that turn around and bitch and moan about how much they think they deserve, and they probably never, ever stepped out of state to learn anything else. Okay? Now, the other part of paying your dues, yeah, $250 or 250 miles away from here, there, and everywhere else. I've done 2-hour drives. I've done 18-hour drives. Put about $60 in a gas tank, car rentals, and I'm pretty sure next to the names I've been watching on TV growing up and seeing them in the same venues over in Germany, yeah. I'm one of those few guys on this level of the circuit that comes out of his pocket, and people will call me a fool for doing it because they don't know that the other promoters can't afford to do that thing. Okay? I come out of pocket to go to Europe. I've been doing it off and on since 2005. I know how it works. Okay? And you can talk about how much you deserve. This is how you can tell if you want to be that smart about it. And if you go back to what I just read, Piper stood up there and told you, you don't act back then, you didn't ask a promoter what the gate looked like. You couldn't even check. You shouldn't have a counter. You did. You're out. You know? You're out. Most cases now it's a gate show. If you're lucky to get that. And see, here's the thing. Part of the whole bit to that whole situation about how much you think you deserve, you can think that in your mind, but where have you been? Not even that. Here's a question. How do you suppose you got those numbers if you didn't draw? Now, that's something nobody's really talked about too much lately. How much have you drawn? Last time I heard, I haven't even heard the term of anybody having the ability of drawing flies. You're still paying your dues. I'm still paying my dues. I'll be the first one to admit it. I can't tell you how many people actually come to see me at any given venue because I haven't had that kind of luxury of getting the kind of widespread exposure to have someone be able to know. Our media for wrestling is so disorganized, so torn apart. There's no way in one particular area you can get somebody to turn around and come from out of state, out of town, out of country to come to one of your shows in an independent level and say, I came to see this guy. Unless, of course, they heard about it through the whole thing with either Joshi Mania coming up, Chikara, Combat Zone. Other than that, if you're not working for one of those venues, guess what? And even then, you might not have drawn. We're not on television anymore. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it until my tongue falls out or I run out of breath. We don't have published media anymore. Pro Wrestling Illustrated is not what it used to be. I mean, seriously. I mean, I know I joke around and all that, but all the things I ever cover on my column in the near 7 years I've done it has always been serious business. But that's definitely food for thought. What's the sickness? I can always read it again, or since I'm putting it up here, you can play it back. Smarter money, go buy Piper's book. I did about maybe 5 years ago. I still read it. Yeah, you can talk about fourth walls being down and all that stuff. It's a lot deeper than a lot of us in this business can ever admit to, because either we don't know that much better, or we're just ignoring the important issues here. Just food for thought. Happy Thanksgiving.